Some motorcycles were built for freedom, others were built for danger. From unpredictable death traps to machines so powerful they're banned from public roads, this countdown reveals the 12 most dangerous bikes ever produced. Number 12. Suzuki TL1000S. This machine was supposed to be Suzuki's answer to the Ducati V-Twin. On paper, it made perfect sense. A liquid-cooled 996 cubic centimeter V-twin engine producing 125 horsepower and around 75 pound-feet of torque, capable of pushing the bike to speeds near 160 miles per hour. Aggressive styling, lightweight frame, and high revving power promised performance with everyday usability. But then came the danger. Instead of a traditional rear suspension setup, Suzuki chose a rotary rear damper, an experimental design that quickly revealed its flaws. This instability triggered tank slappers, violent, uncontrollable shaking of the handlebars that could send riders flying. The danger wasn't just theoretical. Real-world crashes began stacking up, and Suzuki was forced to issue a recall. They eventually added a steering damper to reduce the wobble, but by then the TL1000S had developed a notorious reputation. Riders didn't just fear pushing the limits, they feared normal riding. Experienced motorcyclists described the handling as unpredictable, especially on uneven pavement or during aggressive cornering. Even a small error in input could send the whole machine into chaos. Despite solid straight-line performance, the lack of rear suspension stability turned every ride into a gamble. With a dry weight of around 450 pounds, dual disc brakes up front, and a single disc in the rear, stopping power was decent for the time, but it couldn't compensate for the unpredictable frame behavior. When it launched in the year 1997, the TL1000S had a retail price of approximately $8,500. Today, used models in fair condition can often be found for between $3,000 and $5,000. But buyer beware, that price doesn't account for the risk. The TL1000S didn't earn its reputation lightly. It earned it on the asphalt, one tank slapper at a time. Some bikes are dangerous because of poor design. Others are terrifying because they're too advanced for their time, like the next one. Number 11. Moto Guzzi V8. In the mid-1950s, Moto Guzzi created something so far ahead of its time that even professional racers didn't know what to do with it. The bike featured an 8-cylinder, 500 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled engine, a marvel of engineering. It produced 78 horsepower and around 38 pound-feet of torque, an astonishing figure for the era. This was a motorcycle capable of speeds well above 170 miles per hour. Yet it existed in a time when most bikes were barely topping 100. It had skinny tires, a flex-prone frame, drum brakes, and suspension systems too basic to handle the forces at play. The result? A motorcycle that was nearly impossible to ride at its full potential. Many factory riders refused to race it, fearing high-speed wobbles, sudden loss of grip, and explosive instability under hard acceleration. Those who did risk it often found themselves fighting the machine rather than mastering it. Maintenance was another issue. The engine was complex, sensitive, and notoriously difficult to keep running. With a dry weight near 320 pounds, poor heat management and aerodynamics that barely held the bike together at full speed, it became a monument to brilliance outpacing control. It wasn't just fast, and it was dangerously unrestrained. The V8 was too smart, too advanced, and too early. Only a handful were ever built, and because it was a factory prototype that never saw wide production, it was never given a retail price. However, in today's collector market, an original Moto Guzzi V8 is valued at over $750,000, if you can even find one for sale. What was meant to be a revolution ended up terrifying the very people it was built for. If the Guzzi was terrifying on the racetrack, the next machine brought that same unpredictability to public streets. As we reveal these dangerous bikes, it's clear that some were more about pushing boundaries than offering comfort. What do you think? If you're hooked, don't forget to hit subscribe and drop a comment with your opinion on which bike is the most dangerous. Number 10. Yamaha VMax. What looked like a powerful but friendly cruiser turned out to be one of the wildest production bikes of the 1980s. The VMax launched in the year 1985 and immediately changed the definition of straight-line speed. It came equipped with a liquid-cooled 1197 cubic centimeter VA4 engine, producing 145 horsepower and approximately 83 pound-feet of torque. Thanks to Yamaha's V-Boost system, the power surged above 6,000 revolutions per minute with the force of a dragster, launching the VMax like a missile. Acceleration was savage, but while the engine delivered, the rest of the bike barely kept up. Weighing nearly 600 pounds wet, the VMax was heavy, yet its frame lacked the stiffness needed to handle its brute force. Early models suffered from mid-corner instability, front-end lift during launches, and poor high-speed feedback. The dual front disc brakes and single rear disc were adequate on paper, but not enough when things got chaotic. Suspension travel was short and handling was crude. Riders described the experience as trying to wrestle a wild animal, and that's exactly what made it dangerous. The VMax didn't ease you into power, it punched you with it. Many buyers expected a balanced cruiser and were met with a barely contained drag racer. When it first hit the market in the mid-1980s, the VMax carried a retail price of around $5,300, a premium figure at the time, especially for a so-called cruiser. Today, surviving examples from the original run can be found for anywhere between $4,000 and $8,000 depending on condition, with later models and pristine editions sometimes climbing above $10,000. While the VMax was scary because of brute power, the next bike earned its fear factor through lethal throttle response. The right tools and gear make all the difference. Our recommended picks are down below. Number 9. Suzuki 400 Cyclone. There are motorcycles that challenge riders, and then there are machines that actively fight back. Released in the early 1970s during the dirt bike boom, the TM400 Cyclone was supposed to be a race-winning off-road monster. What riders got instead was a violent, twitchy grenade on two wheels. At the heart of the Cyclone was a 396 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder engine. It produced approximately 40 horsepower and over 30 pound-feet of torque. That might not sound extreme by today's standards, but on a machine weighing just 220 pounds dry, with no electronic safety systems and unpredictable power delivery, it became a recipe for disaster. The throttle response was violent and sudden. 1 second, you were crawling through loose dirt. The next, the front wheel was in the air and the rear tire was kicking sideways. The real danger came from everything else. The steel frame flexed under pressure, the front forks were soft and prone to bottoming out on jumps, and the rear suspension offered little more than decorative support. Braking was equally primitive, with drum brakes at both ends that faded quickly under aggressive riding. Combined with the bike's narrow power band and stiff handling, even experienced racers had trouble keeping it in line. For beginner riders, it was practically a guaranteed crash. When it launched in the year 1971, the TM400 Cyclone was priced around $1,100, a considerable cost for a purpose-built off-road machine at the time. Adjusted for inflation, that would be close to $8,000 today. These days, surviving examples in restorable or running condition typically range from $2,000 to $6,000 on the collector market. Though few buyers seek one for practical use, they're mostly bought as museum pieces or nostalgic trophies of motocross insanity. If that was off-road chaos, the next danger machine delivered raw speed and death on asphalt, with a legendary name behind it. Number 8. HarleyDavidson VRod. There are few bikes in Harley's lineup that split opinion more than the VRod. Designed in partnership with Porsche and released in the early 2000s, it was meant to reinvent what a cruiser could be. With sleek drag-style lines and a high-revving liquid-cooled engine, it looked like the future. But for many traditional Harley riders, it felt like betrayal. And for some, it was much worse. It was a violent surprise that threw them off the bike and into the pavement. Underneath its distinctive styling sat an 1,131 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine. It delivered around 115 horsepower and just over 74 pound-feet of torque. Unlike most Harleys that deliver torque low and early, the V-Rod made its power high in the rev range. Riders used to the slow thump of a cruiser suddenly found themselves holding onto a machine that acted more like a superbike, and that misalignment led to crashes. Weighing approximately 634 pounds wet, the V-Rod was no lightweight. It had a long wheelbase, forward controls, and a low-slung stance. The front end often felt light at high speeds, while the rear tire struggled for grip under hard acceleration. Cornering was awkward and limited by the foot pegs scraping easily. Despite having dual disc brakes in the front and a single disc in the rear, the stopping distance was longer than expected due to the bike's mass and momentum. When the VRod launched in the year 2002, its starting price hovered around $16,500, making it one of the most expensive performance-oriented cruisers in Harley's stable. Today, used models range widely based on condition and mileage, with clean examples typically selling for anywhere between $7,000 and $13,000. Special editions and low-mileage bikes occasionally fetch more, but the risk factor remains constant across the board. Some bikes break expectations. The next one broke bones and a few laws just by existing. Number 7. Kawasaki H2 Mach IV. In the early 1970s, the motorcycle horsepower wars were in full swing, and Kawasaki decided to end the debate with brute force. The result was the H2 Mach IV, a two-stroke triple-cylinder rocket that delivered terrifying acceleration in a package that could barely contain it. At its core was a 748 cubic centimeter air-cooled two-stroke triple that produced approximately 74 horsepower and over 57 pound-feet of torque. That kind of power might seem tame by modern standards, but in a lightweight chassis weighing only 414 pounds wet, it became unmanageable. The throttle acted more like a switch than a control, either off or full fury. The front wheel lifted with the slightest twist and the rear end often fishtailed under power. The real problem was the chassis. The frame flexed under high stress. The suspension was too soft for the power, and the brakes, single discs up front and a drum at the rear, were woefully underpowered. The bike could hit speeds of up to 120 miles per hour, but stopping it in a panic situation was nearly impossible. Add in a short wheelbase and steep rake angle, and the bike became unstable in corners, prone to sudden wobbles and tank slappers. When Kawasaki first released the H2 Mach IV in the year 1972, the retail price was around $1,300. Not cheap, but not outrageous either for a performance bike. Adjusted for inflation, that places it just over $9,000 in today's money. Now, due to its legendary status and rarity, surviving examples in restored or original condition can fetch between $12,000 and $25,000 on the collector market, depending on provenance and mileage. But long before the H2 Mach IV, Kawasaki had already created a beast that terrified an entire generation. Number 6. Kawasaki H1 Mach III. Back in the year 1969, Kawasaki released a motorcycle that quickly earned a reputation for being both legendary and lethal. The H1 Mach III was a two-stroke, three-cylinder rocket disguised as a street bike. Riders were immediately drawn to its aggressive power band and blistering acceleration, but what they got was one of the most unpredictable and dangerous motorcycles ever sold to the public. Weighing just over 380 pounds dry, the H1 produced 60 horsepower from its 499 cubic centimeter air-cooled engine. That figure may seem tame today, but at the time, it made the H1 one of the fastest middleweight motorcycles on the road. Power delivery was sudden and brutal. There was almost no warning. One moment the bike was composed, the next it was yanking the front wheel off the ground or fishtailing the rear tire under hard throttle. That violent surge became both its signature and its downfall. Worse yet was everything surrounding the engine. The frame was never designed to handle that kind of force. The swing arm flexed, the dual rear shocks were overwhelmed by spirited riding, and the front telescopic forks struggled to maintain composure in corners. Twin leading shoe front drum brakes were considered advanced at the time, but they lacked stopping confidence. Riders reported tank slappers, vague handling, and brake fade that turned close calls into emergencies. And there were no electronic safety systems, no anti-lock braking, no traction control. The H1 gave you raw mechanical violence and demanded total focus. A single miscalculation often meant a high-side crash or a trip to the hospital. It earned its nickname, the Widowmaker, the hard way. When it first hit dealerships, the H1 Mach III carried a retail price of approximately $1,100. Adjusted for inflation, that would be roughly $9,000 in today's terms. Tempting back then, and just as haunting today. Some manufacturers dialed it back after bikes like this. Others doubled down and unleashed monsters still banned today. Number 5. Hos V8. There are motorcycles and then there are mechanical statements of insanity, and the Hos V8 lands firmly in the second category. Produced from the early 1990s to the present, this machine doesn't just blur the line between cars and bikes, it drives right over it. At the heart of the Hos is a General Motors-sourced V8 engine, with displacements ranging from 5,700 to over 8,200 cubic centimeters. Some models produce over 450 horsepower and more than 450 pound-feet of torque, figures that most motorcycles can only dream of. That kind of brute force launches this steel beast like a missile, but control is another matter entirely. The Hos weighs roughly 1,100 pounds wet, nearly double the weight of a traditional cruiser. Despite that, it accelerates like a dragster, which means one twist too far on the throttle can end in disaster. Riders report explosive launches and unpredictable traction, especially on less than perfect pavement. Braking power comes from dual disc brakes up front and a single disc in the rear, but even that setup feels insufficient when trying to rein in a half-ton machine moving at highway speeds. The chassis is long and low, designed more for straight-line domination than corner carving. Lean angles are shallow, suspension travel is limited, and maneuvering at low speed is no easy task. Tight corners become an exercise in patience and muscle. The massive rear tire helps stabilize power delivery, but does little for agility. Pricing for a new Hos starts at approximately $65,000, depending on engine size, paint scheme, and customization, with top-tier models easily surpassing $90,000. Used examples typically range from $30,000 to $55,000, but condition and mileage vary widely. Maintenance costs are also steep, given the sheer size and performance of the components involved. While the Hos overwhelmed riders with size, the next bike used futuristic technology that turned dangerous in the real world. Number 4. Honda CX500 Turbo. In the year 1982, Honda made motorcycle history by releasing the world's first mass-produced turbocharged bike, the CX500 Turbo. Dressed in futuristic bodywork with angular fairings, a digital dashboard, and bold turbo decals across the tank and side panels, the CX wasn't just a machine, it was a declaration of what the future was supposed to look like. At its heart was a 497 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine that, thanks to forced induction, produced 82 horsepower and more than 50 pound-feet of torque. Compared to its naturally aspirated sibling, it offered nearly 30% more power, an engineering leap on paper. In practice, though, the ride revealed some serious flaws. The most notorious was turbo lag. Riders would roll on the throttle expecting a surge, only to feel nothing, and then without warning, the turbo would spool and release a violent surge of torque onto the rear wheel. This delayed reaction made for terrifying corner exits and hazardous overtaking. It wasn't a linear buildup, it was a sudden, chaotic punch that arrived when the chassis was least prepared to handle it. The CX weighed more than 570 pounds wet and was built on a frame adapted from the regular CX500. That meant it was never designed to handle turbocharged aggression. The suspension was soft, the wheelbase long, and the chassis flexed under heavy load. Dual front disc brakes offered decent performance in gentle riding, but fell short during hard stops. The rear drum brake barely contributed. With the narrow early 1980s tires, no traction control, and no anti-lock braking, stability was a constant concern. In tight corners or quick transitions, the CX felt more experimental than refined. When it launched in the United States, the CX carried a price tag just under $5,000, a bold figure for the time, especially given its quirks. Adjusted for inflation, that would equal about $15,000 in today's market. From failed tech to forgotten engineering brilliance, our next bike was fast, sleek, and fatally misunderstood. Number 3. Vincent Black Shadow. In the world of motorcycles, some names command instant respect, and the Black Shadow is one of them. Released in the year 1955, this machine wasn't just fast for its time, it was revolutionary. Many consider it the world's first true superbike, and with good reason. It housed a 998 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin engine producing around 55 horsepower and approximately 70 pound-feet of torque, a staggering figure for the mid-20th century. That power, paired with its relatively low weight, allowed the Black Shadow to exceed top speeds of 125 miles per hour. The Black Shadow weighed just over 450 pounds and featured dual drum brakes, a standard setup back then, but barely adequate once you push the bike into triple-digit speeds. The frame offered minimal torsional rigidity, and the suspension, though advanced by 1950 standards, was easily overwhelmed under high-speed cornering, emergency stops, or uneven pavement. The front hydraulic fork and rear cantilevered setup often felt vague and unpredictable when the bike was pushed to its limits. This motorcycle didn't merely test your skills, it tested your survival instincts. On wet roads, the lack of traction and inadequate braking system made every corner a gamble. Even subtle steering inputs at high speed could lead to catastrophic instability. Veterans who rode the Black Shadow hard described the handling as tense, immediate, and in some cases, frightening. Today, finding a Vincent Black Shadow is an expensive proposition. Even unrestored or project condition examples often command more than $10,000, while fully restored or original survivors can fetch between $70,000 and $120,000, depending on provenance. Its value is driven by rarity, history, and the near-mythical reputation it built over time. A symbol of beauty, brutality, and unmatched performance from an era barely ready for it. The Vincent was dangerous because it was ahead of its time. The next machine is dangerous because it left time behind entirely. Number 2. HarleyDavidson Sportster S. At first glance, the Sportster S looks like a lean, aggressive evolution of Harley's classic design language. With its low-slung silhouette, chunky front tire, and angular tank design, it delivers the aesthetic of a refined modern cruiser. Yet beneath the sculpted styling lies a machine that has taken even experienced riders by surprise, and in more than a few cases off their bikes entirely. At the core is the Revolution Max power plant, a 1,252 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin engine that cranks out an eye-widening 121 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque twist the throttle, and the response is immediate, brutal even, with torque hitting hard from the very first roll. Those performance numbers sound like a dream, but the Sportster S demands a level of rider input and control that many are not prepared for. Tipping the scales at just over 502 pounds wet, the Sportster is relatively light by Harley standards. However, the short wheelbase, aggressive rake, and stiff suspension make for an extremely twitchy ride. While the bike feels tame at low speeds, it becomes reactive and unstable at highway velocities or under hard throttle. Braking duties are handled by Brembo components, a single disc up front and one in the rear. Although Brembo is a respected name, the single rotor setup up front is underwhelming for a motorcycle capable of exceeding 130 miles per hour. Emergency stops require a firm hand, and repeated hard braking introduces fade, a major concern for spirited riders. Harley has equipped the bike with cornering-enhanced anti-lock braking and traction control systems, but these safety nets do not eliminate the underlying volatility of the platform. With a starting price of $16,999, the Sportster S lands at the high end of Harley's price spectrum. That price brings impressive engineering and bold design, but it also brings risk. And if you think this bike is deceptively dangerous, our number one pick doesn't bother with deception. It's so deadly, it's banned from public roads entirely. These motorcycles truly redefine what it means to ride on the edge. Which one made your jaw drop? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth looks at the bikes that shape the riding world. Number 1. Kawasaki Ninja H2R. There are fast bikes, there are dangerous bikes, and then there's the Ninja H2R. Introduced in the year 2015, this machine was never intended for public roads. It was born for one environment only, the racetrack, and with good reason. At the heart of the H2R lies a 998 cubic centimeter supercharged inline four-cylinder engine that produces an astonishing 310 horsepower. With ram air assisting at full speed, that number climbs to 326. The H2R also delivers 121 pound-feet of torque, and thanks to its use of lightweight alloys and minimal road equipment, it weighs just under 476 pounds wet. That gives it one of the most extreme power-to-weight ratios ever achieved on two wheels, rivaling Formula One acceleration, but with only two contact patches between you and the asphalt. Top speed? Verified at over 240 miles per hour. And at those speeds, physics becomes a brutal dictator. A slight crosswind, an incorrect lean, or the tiniest hesitation can send even experienced racers into catastrophic failure. No amount of skill can undo what happens when momentum, speed, and gravity collide at over 200 miles per hour. With a starting price of over $55,000, the Ninja H2R is not just a motorcycle, it is an engineering statement. A machine so ferocious that it is banned from all public roads. Not because it cannot be registered, but because it should not be ridden by anyone who is not ready for the consequences of getting it wrong. Each of these bikes proves that some machines are built for thrill and danger. Which one took you by surprise? Drop your thoughts below, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe for more high-octane content. We've got plenty more coming your way.